The scammers operating today are not choosing their targets randomly. This is the thing I want you to understand before anything else I say in this video, because it changes everything about how to think about protection. The phone call that arrives at a particular hour of the day, the email that uses a particular kind of language, the caller who sounds like a particular kind of authority. These contacts are not random. They are targeted. The person on the other end has often been working from a very specific profile, and if you are a woman who lives alone and who is over 60, that profile describes you with considerable precision. I want to be clear about why I am telling you this. I am not telling you to frighten you. Fright without understanding produces only caution, and caution is not the same as protection. Understanding the mechanism produces something considerably more useful, the specific kind of clarity that allows you to recognize what is happening while it is happening, rather than only in hindsight. The women I know who have been approached by scammers and who came away without losing anything are almost always the women who understood, in the moment, why the particular approach being used would work on a person with their specific profile. That understanding is what I want to give you today. Leave a comment below as we go if any of what I describe reflects something you have encountered or something you have watched someone close to you navigate. I find that the women who share their specific experiences in this kind of conversation produce the most useful information for everyone else reading. The first reason women who live alone are targeted first is predictability. A person who lives alone has a predictable rhythm. The hours she is typically home, the hours she is typically available to answer a phone, the periods of the day when she is least likely to be in the middle of something that would make her want to cut a conversation short. Scammers who work by phone, which is a very significant number of them, make their contacts at times calibrated to reach the people most likely to be home, available, and in a state of mind that permits a conversation. The Tuesday afternoon call, the early evening contact. These are not random timing choices. They are the product of knowing, in general terms, who is likely to be available when. What this means practically is that the fact that someone reached you at a moment when you were available and receptive is not evidence that the contact is legitimate. Legitimate businesses also call during business hours and find you available. But a caller who seems to have found exactly the right moment is not demonstrating good fortune. They are demonstrating that someone designed the approach with your pattern in mind. The second reason is the one I think matters most, and it is the most straightforward. There is no one else in the room. When a suspicious call arrives in a household where two people live, the person who answers has a second voice immediately available. A glance across the room, a whispered question, the simple presence of another person who can say, "Wait, something feels wrong here." That presence is one of the most effective forms of protection against a scam that exists, and a woman who lives alone does not have it. She is evaluating the contact entirely on her own, in real time, without the grounding that another person's reaction provides. I want to say this carefully, because I am not suggesting that women who live alone are less capable of evaluating a suspicious contact. The capability is exactly the same. The structural difference is that one person assessing a situation under pressure is more vulnerable to an approach designed for that situation than two people assessing the same thing together. Scammers design their approaches specifically to work on a single person in real time with a time constraint, without the benefit of a second perspective. That is the environment they are building for. And the woman who lives alone is more often in exactly that environment, without any choice in the matter. The third reason is one that I think is specific to the generation most of us belong to. We were raised with a very clear understanding of what politeness requires, that you hear people out, that you do not end a conversation abruptly, that you give the person speaking to you the courtesy of a conclusion before you respond. This is a genuine virtue in ordinary human interaction. It is a specific vulnerability in the context of a scam, because the scammer is counting on exactly this behavior. The longer they can keep you engaged, the more information they can gather, the more pressure they can apply, and the more the relationship they are constructing becomes real enough to feel like an obligation. What I have had to teach myself, and what I think is genuinely one of the most protective habits available, is that ending a call without explanation is not rude when the person on the other end does not deserve the courtesy you are extending them. I have had to practice this. It does not come naturally to a woman raised as I was raised. But the ability to simply end a call that does not feel right, immediately and without apology, is one of the most practical defenses against this kind of contact. You do not owe a stranger your politeness when that stranger is using it against you. Leave a comment below if this particular point, the difficulty of simply ending a call, is something you have experienced. I think it is more common and more specifically the result of how we were raised than most people acknowledge. If you enjoy this channel and want to support my work, just look directly below the video player right next to the subscribe button and click the button that says join. That is how you become a Smart Organizer. Smart Organizers members get exclusive videos, a loyalty badge in the comments, and custom channel emojis. I would love to have you there. The fourth reason is financial. Women who have reached retirement age after a working life often have savings that are relatively concentrated and accessible. Pension deposits that arrive on a predictable schedule, savings that have been built carefully over many years, assets that are available and real. This makes this demographic specifically attractive to the category of financial scam that works through urgency, the contact that requires you to act immediately before you have time to think or to verify or to consult anyone. A wire transfer that needs to happen today, an account that will be closed unless you verify your information right now, a tax situation that requires payment before 5 o'clock. The urgency is not incidental. The urgency is the mechanism. It bypasses the thinking process that would otherwise allow you to recognize the approach for what it is. Legitimate financial institutions do not require you to act within the hour. They do not tell you that your account will be permanently closed if you do not provide information immediately. They do not create a situation in which pausing, thinking, or consulting anyone is presented as having a catastrophic consequence. The presence of that kind of urgency in any unexpected financial contact is, by itself, the clearest possible sign that something is wrong. When you feel the pressure to act immediately, that pressure is the signal, not the emergency. The fifth reason is that women of our generation were raised in a world where institutional authority was a real and reliable category. The doctor knew best. The bank manager could be trusted. The government representative was to be cooperated with. These were not naive beliefs. They were, for the most part, accurate reflections of institutions that were functioning as they were supposed to. What has changed is that the language and the titles and the institutional references of authority can now be reproduced by people who have no actual authority whatsoever. The person calling from Medicare, the representative from Social Security, the officer from the IRS, the investigator from your bank's fraud department. These are the costumes of authority without the content of it. The rule I use, and the one I would suggest, is this. I never take any action based on instructions given to me by a contact I did not initiate. If my bank calls and asks me to verify something, I thank them and hang up and call the bank's official number on my card directly. If someone from Medicare needs to discuss my coverage, I hang up and call the Medicare number myself. If the person calling me has a legitimate reason to reach me, they will still be reachable when I call back. If they discourage me from doing that, or if the matter they described cannot be found when I call the official number, I have learned everything I need to know. The sixth reason is the one I find hardest to discuss plainly, but most important to name. Women who live alone, particularly women who have experienced a significant reduction in their social contact, are more vulnerable to a specific category of scam that works through relationship rather than urgency or authority. These take time. An acquaintance who builds a friendship over weeks or months before any request arrives. An online connection that feels genuine because, in a certain sense, the attention and the interest have been real. The request, when it comes, arrives in the context of something that has been constructed carefully, and refusing it feels like betraying a relationship rather than protecting your finances. What distinguishes this category is a specific feature that I think is reliable as a warning sign. It cannot bear scrutiny from the other people in your life. The genuine relationship wants to be known to your family and your friends. The genuine person in your life welcomes the involvement of the other people who care about you. The person whose interest in you is financial will have reasons why the situation should stay between the two of you, why bringing in your children or your friends would complicate things, why the request needs to be handled quietly. That resistance to external awareness is the clearest marker I know of that something is not what it appears to be. I want to close with what I think actually protects a woman in this situation, because I believe that practical clarity is more valuable than alarm. The first protection is understanding the mechanism, which is what this video has been about. Scams work best on people who believe they were contacted by chance. They work considerably less well on people who understand that the contact was deliberate and that the approach being used was calibrated specifically for their profile. The understanding does not guarantee protection against every approach, but it produces a quality of wariness that is available in the moment rather than only in hindsight. The second protection is the habit of not acting immediately on any unexpected contact involving money, personal information, or urgency. The pause that comes from saying, "I will look into this and call you back," is almost always sufficient to end the approach, because the approach cannot survive a deliberate pause. If the caller insists that a pause is not possible, that insistence is itself the most important information they have given you. The third protection is one other person who knows when something unusual has come your way. My son Daniel, 2 states away, has a standing understanding with me. If I receive any contact that involves an urgent financial matter or that makes me uncertain, I call him before I do anything else. Not because I cannot evaluate it on my own, but because the structural advantage that the scammer has, which is that I am a single person evaluating under pressure, disappears when a second voice is involved. This costs nothing and has given me a consistent and specific peace of mind about living alone that I value considerably. Tell me in the comments whether this is a topic that has touched your life, directly or through someone close to you, and whether there is a specific warning sign you have found reliable. The particular experiences that people share in this conversation are among the most useful forms of protection available, because they make the approaches concrete in a way that general warnings rarely do. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, I would love to have you here. I post regularly on topics like this one, and the subscribe button is just below. And if this is your first time here, I would be glad to have you subscribe. I will see you in the next one.